Shulodd, and hello, Zelamals. I am Matthew Carauddo, author and developer of Diamond Dragons, and today, in this video series called Diamond Discussions, we will chat with varying artists, our diamonds in the rough. Hey guys, Matthew of Diamond Dragons here, and today's Diamond in the Rough is Pagan Malcolm. So Pagan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So tell us about yourself and your work.
So, I am the author of the Starlight Chronicles series and the Ryan Rupert series, which are the two books that I wrote as I was very young, and I'm still very young. So, I wrote the fantasy series, and it's also a contemporary romance. And I wrote those when I was in high school and went on to publish them pretty much after I graduated. So, that has been what I have done pretty much since I left. And not long after that, I also went ahead and started my own business, and I also coach authors for a living. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and that's actually kind of how we met. So to give the viewers an idea, basically I'm on some of these writers and readers groups that would be through Facebook and other various social media kind of situations. And then so I just happened to see some of Pagan's posts and to kind of learn about her, and also saw that in addition to writing, like she said, she's trying to do this business where she's helping writers too. And I've noticed that, and I've been particularly impressed. And she's actually helped my work a little bit. You know, I traded a few messages with her, asking her, "Hey, Pagan, here's the back of Diamond Dragons, the book, which you can kind of see right here." And I kind of wanted to get her input on how do we tighten some things and mess stuff. So she's been very, very kind to, give some input and whatnot. So yeah, Pagan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about maybe this experience that you've had, which you've been mentioning how you wrote this book and it was the first book you ever wrote, but you were almost immediately accepted from the very first, I think you said, offer.
Yeah, so
Tell us, yeah.
I've got the book here.
Yeah,
It is
please hold that
called
up.
Lanterns in the Sky. And what happened is when I was in grade 12, instead of focusing on my exams like everyone else, I was querying publishers. And so by the time I graduated, I had an offer, and it was my very first query attempt ever. So it was really exciting at the time. And, like I did like so much work and research. So I was just like really shocked that I got it on the first attempt, because I was prepared to have rejections.
Makes sense.
And so it was great, but then they went bankrupt about 3 months afterwards. So
Oh no.
I didn't really get to go through the whole process with them, but I did get halfway. So after that, I went ahead and queried it again and didn't get picked up again for another 3 years. But I feel like that was great, and it was the perfect time, and it was the perfect publisher to pick me up by the time that happened. So I believe everything worked out.
Excellent. So you would say that it was like a blessing in disguise then?
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. Very good. Well, I like that too. And I think that's something that's one of the best things about having not only guests on this show, but just artists in general, is that they all have a different experience. And so they bring something different to the table. And um, most people's experiences with taking on any endeavor, whether it's writing or acting or singing or being a director, is completely different than what most people think is
Mm.
how everything goes. Like, I'm sure you probably get a good fair amount of people who think, "Oh, Pagan, you're an author. Wow, that must be just great, sitting in coffee shops and drinking coffee and tapping away and just breathe, enjoying." And then people come up and, "Oh, Pagan, you're a writer, and oh, I bet you're just that's so posh and such a great lifestyle and everything." And you're probably like, Yeah, so that's not how it works."
Not at all. In fact, like I always get asked about my books from people like in the local community, friends and family, all that. They're always asking like, how are your books going? The truth is that I spend about 20% of my time on the books, and I spend about the other 80% on my business. And,
Makes
that's what
sense.
I'm usually doing. That being said, like I still do a lot on the books. I have up to 7 books at this point, but it still takes up a very small amount of my time.
Copy that. And that's magnificent too, Pagan. Like, I'm impressed. Like, you have to understand, I don't put on any fronts. Diamond Dragons is my first book. I wouldn't say that I'm a newbie to writing in general, because I've written a lot of works that work end up as live performances on stage. I used to do 10 to 12 years of live Star Wars fight work performances that I ran as my own business. But what I'm trying to say is, to me, it's very impressive that someone's written 7 books. I mean, that's a lot to have to manage. And I think that's something else that people don't understand, is that I have a feeling that most people who imagine what is it like to be a writer, oh, that must be nice to have written 7 books, they probably have in their imagination that you wrote it, you do a little bit of editing, nothing fancy, and then you put it out there, and that's it. The money just rolls in. I have a feeling
Yeah.
that's what most people think, not let alone 7. They might think, oh, well, if she's working on her 8th book, those 7 must just be generating money, and she just sits back and there's nothing else to do probably. And you'd be like, yeah, that's also not how that works.
Not at all. It takes a lot of marketing effort. And on top of that, because I recently left my publisher, I'm in the process of reverting the rights for 5 of them. So they're not making money at the moment. So yeah, like there's just a lot that goes into the behind the scenes process.
What would you say too has been now your experience of making this very interesting shift from being Pagan Malcolm, the writer who, you've been feeling it out and going, well, what am I going to write about and what's my next book going to be, into this kind of new process that you're explaining, which is you're kind of creating it more of not only that, hi, I'm Pagan Malcolm, the writer, but I'm also here to help you with your writing. This is my business. Tell us a little bit more about what that transition has been like.
I started this business about 3 years ago, and I was always pretty set on having it be the day job. If you call it like the day job, most authors have something like that. I was very adamant that my job, whatever it would be in relation to what I wanted to do as an author, and it would really support that, because that's just the area I wanted to be in. It helps me to be fulfilled. It helps me to support other authors. So I really wanted that to be like the same kind of thing. Like, I consider myself to be an author and a coach, and I believe I can be both things simultaneously and very effectively. But I have noticed that, like, after getting to this point with my books and having published up to 7 of them, I obviously will write books again. I am still writing books right now, and I do have plans to publish books in the future. But I feel like I've gotten to a point of satisfaction with it where if I had to stop tomorrow, I probably could. And I didn't think I'd ever actually get there. So I know that, like, moving forward, I really do want to help authors, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And I could easily like take a break from writing and do that and still feel very like fulfilled and happy in what I'm doing. And even if I then switch again in the future, I still feel like I'd be very happy. So I know that either way, it's something that I want to be doing for the rest of my life.
I love that. That's great. No, I mean, I resonate with that too quite a bit, because in addition to me being this author and me really, promoting Diamond Dragons and whatnot, I feel like I'm a different bird in a certain way where, and again, some of the viewers will know this about me and some will not, which is my background is in a great many things. I was a fencing instructor for many years, actually. So I have my share of golds and silvers and bronzes, nothing Olympic. But the point is, I spent a long time training as a fencer. And at the time that I was training as a fencer and then learning to become an instructor and then teaching children and teaching adults and just, doing these things and continue to compete, I thought that I would be doing that for, arguably maybe the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
I felt that it was also important for me to eventually learn how to let it go. It doesn't mean I can't give people a private fencing lesson every now and again if they so required it. But I eventually had to be like, I want to move to another chapter in my life,
Yeah, and I think that's really important because I know that, like, ever since I could pick up a pen, I've always been writing, and I always thought it would be like the thing that I did for the rest of my life. Just growing up, everyone was telling me you're going to be an author. It's just very clear. So one of the hardest things for me was giving myself permission to do things that I loved that were not writing. And so once I learned that I could do multiple things and it's okay to have multiple passions, it became a lot easier to sort of like give myself permission to take breaks and, accept that other things are also needed in the world from me. And also just I'm allowed to be passionate about them and do them.
I completely concur. And the reason too is I also resonate with that, which is funny. I bet you would agree with this, that, right? So often on the thread, you'll get people saying, I want to be a better writer. What can I do? I've tried. All I do is write and write and write, but I'm not improving and da-da-da-da. And how often, like, correct me if I'm wrong or if you, whether you agree or not, right? That the best advice that you can give that to that person is you need to go and live your life. You need to get
100%.
life experience. And so
Yeah.
if you're not aware and have a really strong connection with falling in love, being betrayed, losing all your money,
Yeah.
you know, something that then it's difficult sometimes, or it puts a bigger obstacle in your way of writing that to be truthful and not contrite and falsified and so on. Would you agree, or what are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. I have the perfect example. So there was a book that I had in my head, like this idea. We get our ideas, we want to run with them immediately. And I couldn't write the book straight away because I knew when I got the idea, I hadn't lived enough yet. Like it
Oh,
was when I just graduated high school and I knew I needed experience in the real world with real world things. And I had no idea what that even looks like back then. So I
I
had to
like
sort of
that.
sit on that idea until I got to a point where I felt like, oh, I think I can write this now because I have like the solid foundation of like what I could write about. I have the experiences to draw on. And that was really important to make sure that it was a truthful book and, it had realism to it, because I just couldn't have done it the way I did it if it had not been before that point
I
or
love
after
that,
that point.
Pagan. That might be the first time I've ever heard such an interesting condition to put those things together. And I'm being honest about that. That's very interesting. I think a lot of writers actually could really benefit from what you just said, which is, again, to reiterate that that's really interesting to recognize that if you're like, hey, idea for book, ka-ching, or idea for a movie or whatever, and then you go to write it and you're thinking, I might want to shelve this because like you said, I don't know how many writers would have that discipline that some people would say, oh, I have such a great idea. I'm so afraid someone else is going to do it or steal it or whatever they think. And then therefore they would just write it haphazardly and then write a naive or a banal or a sort of, we'll call it watered down version of what they might have had they gained ostensibly, like you said, 10 plus years experience or whatever. I like
Yeah.
that. It's very, very astute. I feel,
Yeah. I mean, like,
yeah.
obviously we can generate things from our imaginations anytime, but there really is a difference in writing something based on how you think it would go and then writing something based on how reality is.
Absolutely. For example, in Diamond Dragons, not to keep referencing my work, but it's actually relevant here with what you're saying is, and people won't know this until they actually read the book, and I don't mind revealing it because it's not exactly a spoiler yet, because the book isn't quite out yet, as of the recording of this thing. But I have placed things into the work and the characters and what they're dealing with that have to do a lot with some level of mental illnesses. And what
Mm.
I mean by that is, like, there's some aspects that the characters, certain ones, not all of them obviously, suffer from anxiety, capital A, or
Mm.
a certain level of self-doubt. Okay. And so I don't know if I would have done that if I was 16 and writing Diamond Dragons.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think like it's really difficult to do that when you are young and you don't really know how to navigate those things, or you've never had that experience, like 100%.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Very good. Well, this has been great so far, and I want to use your time wisely. Pagan has another appointment after this too, but I have just a few more questions with this. But this has been absolutely lovely. So, what would you say is your worst, in your opinion, your worst writer's habit?
That's such a hard one. I feel like it's the same as my best writing habit.
Oh, I like it. You tell.
um, I am a huge believer that like routine's really important. Um, not to say that you have to write every day, but maintaining some kind of schedule helps you to stay creative, and it will help you to avoid writer's block because you're in the flow of writing. And so my worst writing habit is that I don't stay in a routine when I know I should. But my best writing habit is probably the same thing, as the fact that I write when I'm most creative. And I know that like if I wait for that period of time, I will be able to smash out like 10K words a day. So it'll be worth the wait. But it's just the fact that like that might be a year on from when I have my next creative writing breakthrough. So it's this like hit and miss kind of thing with my writing. But like I can write when I need to, but it's much easier when I'm doing it from that place of flow. And if I can maintain that flow, that always works much better.
No, I like that. That makes sense too to me too. Actually, it's funny you mentioned those things too, because again, I believe strongly in two words that actually relate to everything that I've ever done. Two words: discipline and
Mm.
consistency.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean because that people always get that confused. They're like, oh yeah, you mean write every day, or you mean practice martial arts every day, or you mean, I'm like, no, I don't mean that necessarily. If writing every day or working out every day or doing lightsaber fighting or fencing every day helps you individually as a person, do it. However, to apply that is the only possibility for someone to be successful at something is just ludicrous. It doesn't make any sense, because we're all so different human beings. That said, that's why I feel discipline and consistency makes sense, because you go like, do you work out 3 days a week? They're like, yeah. Do you do it all the time? Yeah. You're good. You're probably going to get results. Now, someone else might go, whoa, wait a minute. I work out 3 times a day, every day, 7 days a week. I'll be like, congratulations. Both of you apply discipline and consistency. Yeah. And I'm leaving, because I don't want to start an argument with those people who would then seem to maybe say, I'm better, I'm worse, etc. And I'll be like, no, you're both great. But then you have the person, oh, every now and then again, I kind of pick up the pencil and maybe a write. I don't know. I'm like, you're probably never going to finish whatever you're doing. And they'd be like, don't be negative. I'm like, I'm just saying, if you were to put a penny every now and again in a jar, it's probably not going to accrue. But if you put in 1 penny every day, and then maybe even put in 15 on one day, I'm like, you're guaranteed something's going to happen.
Yeah. I think that was the biggest benefit of having a publisher while I did, is like they had deadlines. I had to get books out by a certain time. The reason I left, one of them is because I felt like they had too many deadlines. Like I was putting out too many books a year. It was going against my creative process. But I know from that experience, I can do 2 books a year. That's manageable for me. But I really can't do any more than that. And if I do less than that, it's probably not going to happen. So like that is my sweet spot, is to be writing enough that I can do 2 books a year, but not overloading myself with, oh my gosh, I have to write every day or else I'm a failure, which is just never going to happen.
Yeah. And also that's a very negative way to look at it. And I'm glad you brought that up too, is like, yeah, I don't believe that if people don't write every day, I don't believe that they're a failure. Right. So let's move on to some other questions if we shall. But what's the worst advice that you've ever been given?
The one that always sticks with me is like, when I was in grade 2, we learned about not using the word said, which has stuck with me. And I totally disagree with that, because I think that said is a perfectly fine word. And when you have this belief of like, you can't use the word said, then you overload your work with every other word than said. And then it's just too much. It's too random. It's too, I can't think of the right word here, like oversaturated, let's say. So sure. I think that said is fine, and then knowing when to use the more impactful word is the way to go.
Right. No, I think I would agree with that to some extent too. I do something a little bit different, which is fine with Diamond Dragons. I don't use any of those things at all. I make sure that the reader knows who's going to speak before they say it. And it's by context. And granted, someone might say, well, where did you learn that? Or what makes you think that that's going to work? I'm like, I don't. I'm just going to try it, and I have a feeling it will. So that's my confidence with it and my attempt at it. It's possible it will not. We'll find out. But I always feel that that's another thing that is beneficial to everybody's work, is try something new. Try something that's your style, your panache, what makes you a diamond in the rough, Yeah. And so it's good. And I would agree with you then. It's good to be able to say, you can use said. I agree. It's okay too. I would say, again, in general, repetitiveness is the thing that would bother me. If I saw he said, she said, he said, she's over and over, the problem is it's deluging your mind just as soon as if I kept saying one descriptor that on its own doesn't sound so bad, but you use it 4 times in one paragraph, people are going to notice. If people ever need help with that and they're worried, well, what is too much repeating? I'm like, read it out loud, record yourself, not just whisper it in your mind while you're looking at your words on the page. Read it into a microphone, play it back, and if you're listening to it going, I can't believe I said that word 5 times, then get rid of it, change it to something else. But if you don't truly notice, then probably you did your work right. Or if you trip over a whole bunch of words while you're speaking them, you might want to reconsider it. You don't have to, but you might.
Absolutely. I also think like knowing how to structure dialogue can be a game changer with that too. Like knowing when to change up the sentence structure and how to do that. That's a big one.
Precisely, yeah. And as an actor, I can definitely concur with that. It's very difficult sometimes as an actor to read some lines that immediately. I mean, and again, everybody's different. Sometimes I can read a line and I'll be like, "That guy's never been in that situation before. He's trying to have this guy act tough, but he's never been in a situation where you have to be tough. This is false, pretend tough guy stuff. Don't do that." But that's hard. Yeah, that becomes difficult to see if something's going to flow. That takes experience. There's nothing you can do around that.
Okay.
So one last question, Pagan, for you, and it's been a great pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for coming. But who's the next diamond in the rough? Who would you recommend to come on and be subjected to my Barbara Walters style grilling?
I have the perfect author for you. I have to pull up the name because I always forget the last name. Her name is Naomi Lastrucci, I believe.
Oh, very good.
I can't, if I butchered that, I'm sorry. She has a dragon book. So
well.
I thought that would be perfect. And
I
thought that would be great. And yeah, she has 2 dragon books now, so she would have a lot to share.
Well, that's wonderful too. Yeah, and I've been some people have been popping out too, going like, "Hey, I wrote some stories on dragons." I'm like, I can't wait. Like I love it, and it's another good thing to quickly point onto, which is some people who weren't writers, they were like, "Matthew, aren't you worried about Game of Thrones and this? And you better hurry up." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "Well, they did dragons too. Aren't you worried that this, that, and the other?" I'm like, "You're not even your question is so non sequitur, you don't understand." I'm like, dragons have been around for ages. They're not going away. I'm not the first one to bring up stories about them, and that's not even the point anyways. That's like saying, "Oh, there's a vampire story, I guess I better not write about vampires." I'm like, the key is not about the subject material in the grander sense of their elves or their wizards or their humans or whatever. The question is, what did you write about? Did you write powerful characters that have emotional and maybe physical and maybe psychological conflict in which lessons and things can be learned? And if so, keep writing. And that's kind of what I'm almost getting at is in Diamond Dragons, it's true. I revolved it around dragons, but ostensibly they don't have to be dragons. They could be humans. They could be birds. They could be cats, whatever. What they are powerful characters under environments of extreme emotional and psychological lessons that we can all benefit from. So I'm excited all the time when I get to hear those other dragon stories, because I always know they're going to be different from mine, but they're going to be equally exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's across all books. Like I see this where there's no unique ideas, there's unique twists on the ideas, and I think that's like definitely the takeaway.
I love that, Pagan. That's a great way to say it. Well, thanks so much again for being here. It's been our great pleasure. And that wraps up our interview, our discussion here with Pagan Malcolm. If you want to find out more about Pagan's work, you can look at the links in the description. And of course, if you want to find out more about Diamond Dragons, you can look there as well. I'm Matthew, and we'll see you next time on Diamond Discussions. Thanks for watching. Would you like to be a guest on the show, or do you know a diamond in the rough who should? Contact us, DiamondDragonsTale@gmail.com. Until then, Chion, Chifoy, Vas Res, and Iye Laha.